Hello, my name is Michael Smith. I'm the director here at the National Model Aviation Museum. Happy to be joined today by Bob Sifleet, who was a four-time National Air Modeling Champion, Grand Champion, although with a slight difference in terms of the 1976, and that's what we're here to talk about today, are the trophies that you were kindly donating to us that represent the 1976 National Championships, the Free Flight Champion and then the Open Champion trophies. Can you tell us a little bit about the Nats in 1976, preparing for it, what was going to be involved?
Well, it had been quite a few years since I had attempted to compete for the national championship. In fact, it was a whole decade. Of course, I got married, family, busy with a lot of other things, so I only flew a few events. But for the 76 Nats, I said, well, I'd dust off the control line models and a few other airplanes and go try. And so I really did not much beforehand preparation other than just making sure the control line models worked and a little test flying on a couple things. And so went down to Springfield and Dayton to fly.
Now, was the control line models ones that you had used in previous years' Nats?
Yeah, it's the same two I used in the 66 Nationals. So it's a half-A speed model and a half-A proto speed model.
And then once again, you had to, as part of your registration for the Nats, you had to put on your form that you were going to be competing for the Grand Champion?
Right, yeah, and you had to pre-enter the events. Just like the other Nationals where, the criteria was you could fly a minimum of two free flight gas events, two non-gas free flight, and two U-control, and then three of any other category. So you could take whatever you wanted. Of course, I then flew more free flight events.
And then it was a matter, once again, of accumulating points based on your performance within
right,
those.
Your timer score versus the high time or in free flight max out time.
And so the Nationals there in Springfield, what was your experience there? When was the last time you had been to a Nats?
I had been at the 71 Nats, I believe was the last one prior to that.
and how, I was going to say, how was that?
Well, Springfield was a little unusual. It was, sort of a local municipal airport, good long runways and that type of thing, but a lot of corn all around it. And that's before we had trackers, so chasing was become a paramount thing. You had to really be good at retrieving your models if you had a lot of long flights.
Now, did you have someone there who went with you to the Nats?
Nope, I went down by myself.
So it was a matter of finding a friend or somebody to help out to chase your airplanes?
Well, for the most part, you just did it yourself. I don't think I've recalled having anybody help me on any of the flights.
Oh, goodness.
I know I did on a couple of occasions help a friend or two find a model in the middle of the day when they said, oh, my model's right over here in this patch of corn. Can you help me real quick? I remember doing that a couple times.
And then what about for your control line? Was it a matter of just, again, finding someone to help release the model?
Yeah, I had to find somebody to do that. Of course, you went down to Dayton to Wright Field where they had the control line and the RC was down there. And so I just had to find somebody to help me, and usually it's not much problem to find somebody to launch a speed model for you.
So for the Nats for that year, you were split on several different fields?
Right, it was free flight was at Springfield, and the other events were at Wright Field in Dayton.
Now, did that create a problem in terms of transportation, trying to get back and forth to the different events you were going to fly?
Well, you had to figure out how you were going to get this stuff done and allocate the time required to get it done. Because, in the middle of the day, I'd have to finish a free flight event and then go down to Dayton to fly the control line event before the day ended.
Right.
And, and you figure it was, a 40-minute trip, maybe, something like that each way.
Now, where were you living at in 76?
Okay, I was living in, at that time, Baltimore, Maryland.
So it's a little bit of a drive from your previous ones when you'd been living there in Ohio.
Yeah, yeah.
And where did you stay then?
I can't remember. I think there was a school we stayed in. They had dormitory rooms available, if I recall. And that's how we stayed in it. Some college or something there in Springfield.
Okay. And then, do you recall what events you flew and what days you flew them on?
Well, I can't remember the days, but I can remember the events. But I flew half A and B free flight, Mulvihill, F1A Nordic, F1B Wakefield, F1C Power, and then the 2 control line events.
Well, and obviously you did pretty good in free flight since
Well,
you
I had
were awarded
a good session in free flight. I didn't win anything, but I did really well. I mean, I was second in Wakefield, third in A-Gas, FAI Power, and tow line glider, and fifth in Mulvihill. And in doing that, why, I had, nearly posted perfect scores in those events, just even to place that high. So that gave me a lot of high percentage points.
And then how did you do in the control line?
Well, I didn't place, but the airplanes flew. But then again, at half A speed, so I made, maybe like 98, 99 miles an hour back then, but the winning time was, score was maybe 115. Well, that's a pretty good percentage point, and kind of the same way in proto speed. So it's didn't fly him to win, just to make a decent score.
Right. More about being consistent and being able to, like you said, post those scores so accumulation would add up.
Yeah, and in free flight you had to be very careful because you made, in most of those, well, the FAI events we flew 7 flights, and the other free flight events you fly 3. Well, you just can't mess up any way and not get a flight in, or to make a very poor score, because that would just, just one of those would almost knock you out of the competition for the high point. I mean, if you lose 30 points just off of one flight in an event, it could be, so you have to play just a little conservative game with the flying, which might affect you actually winning, but doesn't keep you from doing well.
Yeah, definitely one of those cases where you couldn't just focus on the win, you had to focus more on the overall flight and what your end goal was. Your end goal wasn't to win that event, your end goal was to win the overall.
Overall, that's right. And that's the way I did it on all the previous nationals where I won. It was the same type of thing.
Now, flying that many free flight events, was that difficult on that flying site? Was that a good flying site?
Well, it was good, except once you were off of it, which did happen a few times. It was all corn. I can't remember anything else but cornfields. So you had to be quick on the retrieval and be close to when the model come down, as close as you could be to it.
And did you have to go into the corn to?
A number of times.
Now, for that event, in the previous years when it was the Navy Nats, they would have the awarding ceremony at the air show. Mm-hmm. How was the ceremony, what was done for this particular Nats?
That was done at Dayton. They had, I believe there was a limited air show there, an air show of some sort, and some demonstrations and stuff, because there was a public crowd there, some demonstration flights and stuff of models.
Now, you said in going back, this year we know was the last year that these awards or this type of award was given, but they did not have the Grand Champion Award this year.
Yeah, I don't know the politics as to why they changed, other than the fact that I believe that was the first time that I knew of where they gave away category awards. So it was maybe just a matter of where you're going to put your money, maybe.
Yeah, because obviously this year, with your other ones, you had the junior, the senior, and the open champions.
Right.
And then the individual who scored the highest of the junior, senior, and open was awarded the grand champion.
That's correct, yeah.
And this year, they had free flight, control line, and radio control champions.
Right.
and then they had just the junior, senior, and open champions.
That's correct, yeah.
And like I said, as you're kind enough to donate, we've got the outdoor champion for free flight, and then the open champion for free flight. A little bit of difference in terms of your previous trophies and the appearance.
Well, I think they had the trophies be a little more spectacular in preceding years.
Now, in terms of this Nats, were there any memorable flights or memorable events or things that happened?
Oh, I can't remember other than maybe some of the people that were there. There was Pierre Trosborg from France was there flying. He flew Wakefield. In fact, I lent him my motorcycle so he could chase. And that's when I first met him, and we've become great friends ever since. I mean, almost any time I go to Europe to fly F1E, he's always there, and he's always a good buddy. And then also Lars Olofsson of Sweden, who the previous year had won the F1C World Championship. And Raul Anderson from Toledo hosted him, and he came over and flew a couple of events at this Nats too. So it had a little international flavor to it too.
Well, that was definitely exciting to meet some different people, some different flyers.
Right, yeah.
Because you said that when you were flying some of the local contests, it was always a case of the same people that
always
you saw
the same people
all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So definitely a unique experience to have some overseas participants.
Yeah. And it was neat that people, came from Europe to fly the Nats.
And how was the weather that year?
It was a little wet a couple of the days. If I remember, it was kind of wet and rainy. Half a day, I remember it was pretty sloppy. And the other days, it threatened rain a little bit. And a little bit breezy on 2 of the days also. That's when we were finding the cornfields.
And how was the control line? How was the fields down in Dayton for control line?
Well, they flew control line out on the aprons in front of the hangars, so it was decent for control line.
And you said RC was also flown down there as well?
Down there also, yeah.
And of all the Nats that you participated in terms of your winning, so the 4 times that you won, what were your thoughts when you were successful this time again?
Well, I said I could do it again. That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Try to achieve it.
Well, especially that time gap.
Yeah. Well, I still had good airplanes. I was flying mostly FAI things, and so it wasn't that hard really. But I had just worked on a couple of events, tow line glider and F1s in FAI power. That's what I had mainly worked on. But you always have a few other airplanes.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to mention about those Nats?
Well, it was, when you look back, it was a big challenge, but it was a relief to get through it. Because you're not really concentrating on one day's competition. At those prior Nats, you're worried about flying on 6 or 7 days. And 1 or 2, and maybe even in a couple cases 3 events a day that you've got to do as well as you can.
Well, like you said, with the free flight events, you had to make sure you were doing good. You couldn't risk doing bad in one event and losing too much points, or it would be all done.
Be all done, that's right.
Well, thank you very much again for joining us and for the wonderful donation of your 4 years Open and Grand Champion, and the first trophy that we've got representing a class. So we really appreciate your donation to the museum.
Well, you're most welcome.